We're fortunate today to have Cory Burdette. He is a resident of Boonville, and he currently works at the USS LST Museum in Evansville. He is a graduate of Western Kentucky University in Bowling Green with a history degree. And even while in college, he worked in the museum business at the Historic Rail Park and Train Museum there. Today he's going to talk to us about the Gator Navy, the importance of the LST in World War II and beyond. And so we have, it's very timely too, in 2 days we have the 80th anniversary of Pearl Harbor. So we welcome you, Cory.
Alrighty, well thank you very much and good afternoon. How are you guys doing today?
Good.
Doing good? Alright, well as she said, my name is Cory Burdette. I currently work at the USS LST-325 Memorial Inc. in Evansville, Indiana. We're right on Riverside Drive. You can't miss us. We're only about 328 feet long. But I'm here today to talk about the Gator Navy. About the Gator Navy and the importance of LSTs in World War II and beyond. But before we start with the LST, let's go ahead and do a recap of World War II real fast. So World War II was a global conflict that was going on between 1939 with the invasion of Poland by Germany until 1945. And you had the two sides, the Allies, which of course the United States, Great Britain, France, and the USSR, or the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. And then you had the Axis, which had the Nazi Germany, the Empire of Japan, and Italy. And World War II would actually take place in two different areas of the world. So you had the European theater, which is over here, and you also had the Pacific theater. Now the LST-325 was only involved with the European theater. However, LSTs would be used for both areas of the conflicts. And the United States didn't actually get involved with World War II until the invasion of Pearl Harbor, which was on December 7th, 1941, which, as she mentioned, we're celebrating 80 years here in a couple of days. Now, does anyone know what LST stands for?
Landing ship.
Yes, sir. Yes, landing ship tank. That is correct. There are some other names that they have for it, but we'll talk about them here in just a little bit. And does anyone know who this gentleman is right here?
Churchill?
It is. It's a very young Sir Winston Churchill. But this was taken in World War I because he would go on to, in World War II, be the Prime Minister of Britain. But in World War I, he was known as the First Lord of the Admiralty. So he was very much in charge of a lot of different operations, including the invasion of Gallipoli. And the invasion of Gallipoli was basically where we were trying to take the Dardanelles Channel, which was basically a huge waterway connecting Europe and Russia at the time. And it was a very bad defeat because most of these ships, as you see right here, they didn't have a way to actually get up onto the shore to drop off their equipment, so they only had these smaller boats which got riddled to bits, and also meant a huge loss of life as well. So, after the war, Mr. Winston Churchill, he came up with the idea of having a ship that could bring all your supplies, your troops, everything you needed right onto the shore. And this guy, John C. Niedermeyer, was appointed by the U.S. Navy Bureau to come up with the LST as we know it today. And let's take a closer look at our LST. So standard LST is 328 feet long and 50 feet wide, which is really not that big compared to aircraft carriers or even some battleships, but it's still pretty big. And we would transport a variety of different equipments, but most of the time we would transport Sherman tanks. So here's a picture of our tank deck, which we'd hold 20 Sherman tanks. We'd also have 20 to 30 trucks, which these are referred to as deuce and a halves, due to 2.5 ton trucks. And we would also transport anywhere from 4 to 6 LCVPs, which stand for Landing Craft Vehicle Personnels. They're also referred to by their nickname Higgins boats, and you might recognize them from movies such as Saving Private Ryan, as well as Flags of Our Fathers. And we'd also transport around 300 personnel, including 200 troops and around 110 crewmen, including 8 to 10 officers at one time. And we'd transport a lot of different equipments. So up here in the corner, we have our WWIIs, which are amphibious trucks. Over here, we have LCTs, or landing craft tanks, and these are like Higgins boats, but for tanks. And we'd even transport fully functional locomotive trains on tracks with additional track that was built out from the ramp, and the train made its way off right off the ramp onto the mainland. The LST-325 would even transport a herd of donkeys when we were back in Sicily. Alrighty, so as the name up here implies, the LST is a flat bottom ship. Now that worked because of the design of the LST, but also it kind of caused some problems. Because flat bottom ships, they will sway out in the ocean. They'll tilt anywhere from 45 up to 60 degrees in some cases. But here is the key to the LST success, the ballast tanks. So the ballast tanks are all the way at down in the bottom or the bilge of the ship, and they are a series of pipes and also other water, basically huge water containers. And you can fill up the ballast tanks, and you can lower the LST so it's not swaying so much out in open waters, and then you can empty the ballast tanks and raise it up so that way it doesn't get stuck in shallower ground. And also we have our iconic doors and ramp. So these doors would open up whenever the LST got close to the shore, then the ramp would come down, and you can't really see in the picture, but I tried to get a good one, but there are these yellow huge hooks called turnbuckles that keep the ramp inside, and it's also a watertight seal. I've been asked about that before too. And then whenever it's ready to come onto the shore, it opens up the doors in the ramp and the trucks come off, as well as the tanks. Alrighty, so being a ship, naturally we have guns on board. So on board we would have 12 20mm or looking anti-aircraft cannons, this one you see right down here. Now today I brought a couple of pieces with me. So here is a standardized 20mm shell that you see right here in my hands. Now this gun could shoot well over 400 of these in under a minute. 460 to be exact. And the way they work is they have a little ticker inside right where my fingernail is. And that little ticker will go off after a certain amount of rotations because these are all spinning as they're coming out because the barrels are all rifled. And whenever it explodes, it'll send off the fronts and little pieces of shrapnel or bits of metal and other debris along with it. Now we had more than just the 20mm Oerlikon. We also had 4 single barrel 40mm Beaufort cannons, which there's a picture of one right there. And I brought one of those shells with me too. So here's a standard 40mm shell. Now even though these are big, they can still shoot pretty fast because these can shoot 120 of these in under a minute. And also the range is something that's also very impressive with these guns because the Oerlikon had a maximum range of up to 4,800 yards, which is pretty good. But up here, the Beauforts, they have a maximum range of up to 8 miles. And they're also pretty accurate as well. And then over here, we have our twin barrel 40mm Beaufort cannon. And we have 2 of those, one on the front or the bow of the ship and one on the back or the stern of the ship. Alright, so here's a World War II training video that actually shows the process of landing the LST onto the beach. So you guys enjoy.
The ship goes from general quarters to condition 1 Mike, beaching station. The first lieutenant comes forward to take charge of bow door and lamp control. The ventilators are started. The troops man their tanks, and the fire watch stand by as the motors are started and warmed up. The lashing chains are cast loose and the treads blocked. bow doors open is reported to the con. The command is then given lower ramp, and the ramp is lowered to about 6 feet above waterline. As soon as the beach has been fairly hit, the order is given to drop the ramp. The traffic light turns to green, and the tanks move out quickly. About 1 minute has passed since the stern anchor was let go.
Alright. So because of those iconic bow doors and ramp, the LSTs were known as the Gator Navy Amphibious Unit because it reminded people of an alligator's mouth whenever they opened up. They were also known as the teeth of the fleet as well. Now, we didn't enter the war until after the attacks of Pearl Harbor, but whenever we did, the United States went to work very, very quickly. And here in Evansville, we didn't have, or here in Evansville, let me try to say that one more time. Here in Evansville, there's no exceptions, because we have what was known as the Missouri River Valley Bridge and Iron Company, or we like to refer to as the Evansville Shipyard. But we employed up to 22,000 people whenever it started, and that included people in Evansville and even Newburgh and the surrounding areas. And also, roughly 48% of the workforce were women, such as Miss Evelyn W. Cox, that you see right down over there. And we made 167 LSTs. And these LSTs would go on to serve in vital roles throughout the war. Now, the LST-325, it wasn't actually built in Evansville. It was built in Philadelphia, at the Philadelphia Shipyard in Pennsylvania. But she would go on to serve in what was known as Operation Husky, which was the invasion of Sicily, and then Operation Avalanche, which was the invasion of Salerno, Italy, both in 1943. And she was also involved with Operation Overlord, which you might know better today as D-Day, which was executed on June 6, 1944. It was originally supposed to happen on June 5th, but due to bad weather and other reasons, got pushed back to June 6th. And she is actually in this picture, the LST-325, right there. And LSTs would go on to be serve in Korea and Vietnam after World War II. For instance, we have an LST over here in Korea, and then we have a couple on the shores in Vietnam. But actually, it's kind of sad because after World War II, most of the LSTs that were used during that time, they would just be put up what's called mothballed, which is basically long-term storage, and they basically sit and rot. And sadly, a lot of them were scrapped and used for other things. But the LST still lives on today. For instance, this is a modern-day LST from the Nigerian Navy. And even the United States Navy is actually working on an amphibious watercraft that's very characteristic of the LST back in the day, especially up here, those iconic bow doors and ramp. Now, how did I get started with the LST? So basically, I just answered an inquiry on Indeed, and I just sent in my resume, and as they say, the rest is history. But I started out as a tour guide, and now today I work in the office and help out with what I'm doing right now, giving presentations and helping out with exhibits, and also still giving tours whenever I can. But at the LST-325, we have a mission, just like any museum. We have a mission to continue to tell history and to make sure that those stories stay alive. And we have it with our brand new facility that, well, it's not brand new, but a couple years old, so it's still a relatively new facility that we're at now right on Riverside. And we have an inside museum where we use artifacts and also our guided tours to help keep those stories alive, because there's not many of those guys left around to tell those stories anymore. So it's important that the later generations still get to know what's going on. Now, our LST special, because ours still works, and we like to go out on what we call cruise, which is where we go once a year. We head out to 3 port cities, and this year we tried heading out to 3 port cities. We went to Brandenburg, Kentucky, which is near Louisville, Kentucky, but sadly due to COVID we had to bring the ship back early. But this next year we're hoping to go back to where we were supposed to go, which was Ashland, Kentucky and Charleston, West Virginia. And this next year we're going to be going back to Cincinnati, right up there. Cincinnati really loves us. We've been there multiple times. But we've also been to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We've been down to New Orleans, Louisiana, all along the Mississippi River, so Missouri, Iowa, Mississippi, and even over to Texas. Every 5 to 6 years we have to do what's called dry dock, where we have to abide by the Coast Guard regulations and make sure everything is quote-unquote ship-shape. All puns intended. But this slide over here is just telling you we would love to have you come on down to take a tour with us, walk the decks of history. And for some of you older folks, if you have nothing better to do and you're looking to join with us, you can actually join on cruise with us. We're always taking volunteers. You have to be at least 18 years old to volunteer with us. But we have a variety of different jobs. We do everything from electric work, welding, painting, even giving tours. So all the above. And they are a fun group of people, that's for sure. But that's all I pretty much have today. Thank you to the Newburgh Museum for having me come out today, and I will take any questions, but thank you very much.
Maintenance, you must have problems getting parts.
You'd be surprised. We actually, most of the time, the parts and also the equipment that we use are actually from the 1940s era. But due to technology and things like that, we really can't replicate some of the parts that we need, but we can usually find modern day substitutes. That's still pretty cool, because every now and then they have to resort to the original 1940s manuals, which they all have on digital file. So it's nice. Technology is great. Yes, sir.
What would be the range of one of these? In other words, how far out could the mothership be before this thing had to come into the land?
Let's see. I'm trying to... Because, like, mothership, so you mean like are you referring to the LST as the mothership? Or
Yeah, you sure the LST.
Sure. Okay. So the LST would actually hit right onto the shore. So I guess I'm still trying to figure out your question.
Well, you say this goes to New Orleans, or it's gone across the ocean. Wasn't it in Greece for a while?
It was,
And
yes.
they were able to bring it all the way across the Atlantic.
Yes.
But would it have to be resupplied or refueled?
That's a good question. Okay, yes, so I understand what you mean now. Yes, so she is fully capable of running her own power, and she doesn't need any other ships to go with her, and she can potentially cross the Atlantic again. It's just there's a lot of red tape that's involved with something like that. But what he was talking about, the LST was in Greece. It was part of the Greek Navy from 1964 up until 1999, and in the year 2000, the USS LST Memorial Fund decided to purchase the LST and bring it back over to the United States to make sure that it came back home. And it was a huge process, years in the making, and it took them about 2 months to come back home, and roughly a crew of about 45 to 50 people, as opposed to 110 that I told you about earlier. And everyone on there was 65 years old or older whenever that was going on. But if you want to find out more about it, the captain, His name is Robert or Bob Jorlin. He wrote a really great book called Bringing Back a Hero, which I'm sure you'd be able to find. You can find in our gift shop at the LST, but you can also find it online, I'm sure. But he also goes around and does talks about it too. There's also a documentary called Hero Ships, which talks about it as well. But it was a very lengthy process, but thankfully we have a lot of dedicated volunteers that brought it back, but also make sure that it's still maintained to its original glory, like it was back in the day. And also, her fuel, she can hold 188,000 gallons of fuel at one time. So she doesn't need any fuel. She's good. All right. Any other questions? No.
Does she offload without having going off to the beach?
I'm sorry?
Could she offload, just like to an LCV or something, without going out to the beach? If they, in the event that is there any means for that?
Yes, absolutely. So you see these metal arms right here?
Okay.
So these metal arms are referred to as davits. So these davits are what the LCVPs, or the Land Craft Vehicle Personnel, would be on. Now this is actually a really good point to bring up. So whenever D-Day was going on June 6th, she was in the water in the harbor, but she didn't actually hit the shore until June 12th due to a bunch of different mines and things that had to be cleared out first. So what we did was we used these davit systems to launch our LCVPs from the boats, or from the ship, and bring the boats out or up onto the shore.
How many LCVs would that be?
We could hold up to 4 at one time, but some LSTs could hold up to 6.
They just fastened to the side of the ship?
Basically, yeah, right onto the side. We could also transport an LCT, which were like the Higgins boats, but for tanks. And we could hold one of those up on our main deck, right up there. And some LSTs, they were used for a variety of different things, which if you haven't gathered that from my presentation, but they would actually have a platform that would be put on top of the main deck, and they could even be used as early aircraft carriers before aircraft carriers were actually a thing. All right.
The Navy doesn't have any LSCs now.
Well, they're working on ships that are kind of like this. Not the same size, and definitely not the same design, but something similar to this. All right. Well, thank you again to the Newburgh Museum for having me, and hope you guys have a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Thank you.
Thank you, Cory.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Cory brought some literature and a helmet back there on the table. Please help yourself to those.
Not the helmet, we need that.
Well, yes, that's right. Thank you. And while you're here, our current exhibit will be coming down in about 2 weeks or so, the 18th of December. So if you haven't looked around, please do and enjoy our Newburgh Rocks exhibit. Thank you, Cory.
Thank you.